On a distant planet, far beyond the reach of any known civilization, Alia stood alone. Her once vibrant world was now nothing more than a barren wasteland. The towering structures of cities now lay in ruins, their ancient stone walls crumbling to dust, swallowed by the relentless passage of time. The skies above, once filled with the colors of life, were now a permanent shade of gray, as though the very heavens had wept for the destruction that had befallen this world. All that remained was the haunting silence of a forgotten land. Alia, the last of her kind, was a creature unlike any human could comprehend. With shimmering silvery fur that covered her tall, powerful frame, and piercing amber eyes that seemed to glow with an inner fire, she was a beast woman, an alien of immense strength and grace. She was born of a race that had long since vanished, wiped out by war, disease, and the ravages of time. Alia had outlasted them all, the last of her people, left to wander the endless ruins of a once thriving civilization. For years, Alia had roamed these lifeless lands, her heart heavy with the burden of loneliness. She had witnessed the slow, painful collapse of everything she had ever known. The people, the culture, the cities, gone. Her only companions were the winds that howled through the empty streets, the whispers of the past that clung to the shattered buildings, and the distant fading memories of her people. Yet, through all of this, Alia had never abandoned hope. There was something deep within her soul that refused to accept the end of her world. For reasons she could not fully explain, she believed in a legend, a story that had been passed down through the generations, whispered by the elders when her people still lived. It was a story of a human, someone from a distant world who would come to this planet in its darkest hour and bring with them the power to change everything. Alia had heard the tale many times as a child. It was a comforting thought, a light in the darkness of her young mind. She had always imagined that the human would come one day, that they would arrive like a savior, bringing hope to a world on the brink of collapse. But as the years passed, and the planet continued to decay, the story became just that. A story. Still, Alia clung to that dream. She had always been a believer, even when there was no proof, no sign of the human's arrival. She had no way of knowing when the human might appear or if they even existed at all. But in the deepest corners of her heart, she refused to let go of the belief that one day somehow the human would come. And so, every day, Alia climbed to the highest point of the ruins and gazed out over the vast, desolate landscape. She watched as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the broken world. The winds would pick up, swirling dust and debris around her, but she remained still, waiting. Her eyes, sharp and focused, scanned the horizon for any sign of movement. It had become a ritual, one that had lasted for years. She stood there, day after day, watching and waiting, her faith unwavering. The world around her seemed to mock her hope. The planet's landscape was unforgiving, a maze of jagged rocks and crumbling structures. Once proud cities now stood like ghostly monuments to a civilization long gone. Alia's heart would sometimes break as she walked through the deserted streets, her footsteps echoing in the emptiness. There were no sounds of life, no voices of friends or family to share the silence with. The only living beings on the planet were the few animals that had managed to survive the devastation, creatures that roamed the planet, just as lonely as Alia herself. Yet through it all, she held onto her faith. Every evening when the stars appeared in the sky, she would look up, her eyes searching the endless expanse of space. In her mind, she could see the human, far away on another world, watching the stars just like she did. She believed that one day their paths would cross, and when that day came, everything would change. But as time went on, Alia's hope began to fade. The years turned into decades, and the world around her continued to crumble. The faint glow of the human's arrival, that had once burned so brightly in her heart, now seemed distant, like a fading star in the night sky. The ruins of the planet were a constant reminder of how much was lost, how much had been forgotten. She had no way of knowing if the human would ever come. There was no sign, no message from the stars, but still, Alia held on to the story. It was all she had left. In the quiet solitude of her existence, she had become a shadow, a lone figure standing in the midst of a broken world. The weight of her loneliness pressed down on her heart, but her faith in the legend, the belief that the human would come, remained her constant companion. It was a fragile thread, but it was enough to keep her from sinking into despair as ice. Alia stood on the edge of the ruined city, watching the endless horizon stretch out before her. A sense of calm washed over her. She was alone, yes, but she was not without hope. And with that thought, she turned away from the vast emptiness and walked deeper into the ruins, her heart beating with the quiet certainty that one day the human would arrive. And when that day came, everything would change. Alia's life had become a routine of survival. Every morning she would rise from the small shelter she had built among the ruins, a place where she had found some semblance of safety from the harsh environment. The wind howled outside, carrying with it the dust and debris of a world that no longer remembered what it had once been. Yet, despite the constant reminder of the planet's decay, Alia held on to one thing, her hope. Hope was all she had left. Each day, she would make her way through the ruins, scanning the vast, broken landscape for anything that could bring her closer to the dream she had held onto for so long. The human. She didn't know what he would look like, what kind of person he might be, but in her heart, she knew he was out there somewhere waiting to come to her world. She imagined him, tall, strong, with eyes that could see beyond the wreckage of this planet, eyes that would understand her pain. The days were long and lonely, but every night as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Alia would look up, her heart racing with anticipation. In her mind's eye, she could see him. He was coming. She had to believe it. The dream of the human had started as a story, a tale, passed down by the elders of her people before the end. It had been nothing more than a comforting thought, a legend that gave hope to those who feared the darkness of the future. But Alia had never stopped believing. The legend had become her truth, and every passing year, every lonely night had only strengthened her resolve. She would wait, as long as it took. But now, after so many years of waiting, the dream was beginning to feel more like a distant memory than a reality. Alia had spent countless days searching the sky, watching the stars, hoping for a sign. She had once believed that the human's arrival would be the key to restoring this broken world. But as the years had passed, the planet had only continued to crumble, and Alia had begun to question her own faith. There were days when she would sit by the remains of an ancient fire pit, her head in her hands, feeling the weight of loneliness press down on her. She would wonder if the human was a fantasy, a dream she had created to escape the pain of living in a world that had no future. She had seen the end of everything she had known, her people, her home, her entire world, and now it seemed as though she might never see the one thing she had always longed for. And yet, despite the doubt that began to creep into her heart, Alia would never let go of the story. She couldn't. It was all she had left to hold on to. One day, as she walked through the ruins of a long-forgotten temple, Alia noticed something strange. In the distance, beyond the remnants of shattered stone and broken pillars, she saw a flicker of movement. At first, she thought it was just another trick of the wind or perhaps the shifting of the clouds. But then the flicker came again, this time more pronounced, more deliberate. A figure. Her breath caught in her throat as she squinted, her amber eyes narrowing. The figure was far off, barely a shadow in the distance, but it was there. It had to be. Could it be him? For a moment, Alia stood frozen, her mind racing. She had waited for this moment for so long, but now that it had arrived, she didn't know what to do. Should she run toward him? Should she call out? Or was this just another mirage? Another illusion in a world that had long since lost its way? The figure seemed to move again, and Alia's heart skipped a beat. It was definitely real. She could see it now. There was someone there, moving through the wreckage just as she had been for so many years. But was it the human she had been dreaming of? Or was it someone else, someone from the past, a survivor like her? With determination, Alia began to move toward the figure, her steps quickening as she navigated the broken landscape. She had no idea who or what it was, but she couldn't ignore the possibility that this could be the sign she had been waiting for. The human, her dream, might finally be real. As she got closer, Alia could see the figure more clearly. It was a man, but not like any man she had seen before. His clothes were unlike anything she had ever known, covered in strange symbols and intricate designs. His skin, though pale, seemed different from that of her people. He didn't belong to this world. Alia stopped a few paces away from him, her eyes locked on his. He turned toward her slowly, his expression unreadable, as if he had not expected to find anyone here, in the middle of this ruined world. For a moment, they stood there in silence, studying each other. Alia felt a mix of emotions flood through her. Relief, excitement, fear. Was this the human she had been waiting for, or was he simply another traveler lost on a dying world? Finally, the man spoke. His voice was low and hesitant, as if he wasn't sure what to say. "Who are you?" he asked, his gaze moving over Alia, taking in her appearance. "Where am I?" Alia's heart raced. She had never heard the human speak before, never imagined what he would sound like. His voice was calm, yet there was a sense of urgency in it, a desperation that mirrored her own. "I am Alia," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "And this is my world. What are you doing here?" The man looked around, his eyes widening as he took in the desolation that surrounded them. I don't know. I was sent here. I think..." His words trailed off as if he was unsure of his own purpose. Alia stepped closer, her mind spinning. Could this really be the moment she had waited for? The dream of humanity was standing before her, but the truth was more uncertain than she could have ever imagined. Would this man be the one to change everything? Or would he, too, be just another lost soul in a world of ruin? As the tension between them thickened, Alia could feel the weight of everything she had hoped for pressing down on her. This was the moment her dream had led her to. But what would come next? The answers she had longed for were still out of reach, and so as the silence stretched on, Alia could only wonder what the future would hold. Would the human be the key to saving this world? Or was it already too late? The mystery deepened, and Alia's heart raced with anticipation, uncertain of what would happen next, but unwilling to let go of the dream that had kept her alive for so long. Alia stood in stunned silence, her heart hammering in her chest, as the man before her seemed just as confused as she was. The years of waiting, the endless hopes and dreams had led to this moment. A human, not a mirage or a dream, but a real person, stood before her on this broken, desolate world. The reality of the situation struck her like a heavy blow, knocking the breath out of her chest. The man, still unsure of his surroundings, looked at her again, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. He seemed to be studying her, taking in every detail of her appearance, her towering, muscular form, the shimmering fur that covered her skin, and the amber eyes that glowed in the dim light of the dying planet. For a moment, Alia could sense his hesitation. He had not expected this. He had not expected her. "What are you?" The man's voice was shaky, his words coming out in a mix of awe and confusion. His gaze flickered over the surrounding ruins, the decay that stretched as far as the eye could see. "I don't. This place, it's..." He paused, struggling to find the right words. What happened here? Alia's heart sank as she heard the question, one she had asked herself 1,000 times. This man, this human, had no idea what had brought him here, no understanding of the devastation that had wiped out her people and left her alone in this desolate world. She had hoped, for so long, that the human would come as a savior, a beacon of hope. But now, standing before her, the human seemed just as lost, just as broken as the planet itself. "I am Alia," she said, her voice steady but tinged with the weight of years of solitude. "I am the last of my kind. This world, it was once beautiful, full of life and civilization, but now Now it is nothing but ruins. She gestured to the landscape, her eyes falling on the wreckage of what had once been a thriving city. We were destroyed by war, by the very forces we created. And now I wait. The man's eyes widened as she spoke, but he said nothing, his mouth agape in shock. It seemed as though he could not comprehend the magnitude of what she had just revealed. After a long, heavy silence, he finally spoke again. "I don't understand," he said, his voice low, almost to himself. "Why am I here? I don't know how I got here." He looked at her, as though hoping she might have the answers that he so desperately needed. Alia could feel the shift in the air, the unspoken tension between them. She had been waiting for this moment for so long, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure what to do. The man wasn't the savior she had imagined. He wasn't the one who had come to restore the planet to its former glory. Instead, he was a stranger, lost, confused, and seemingly as helpless as she had felt all those years ago. But even as doubt began to creep into her heart, Alia refused to give up. She had to believe. She had to trust that the arrival of this human meant something, that this moment was not just an illusion but the beginning of something new. She had waited too long to let go now. You're the one I've been waiting for," she said, her voice soft but filled with conviction. "You're the human who was supposed to come. I don't know why or how, but I believe you are the one who can save this world." The man looked at her, his face a mixture of disbelief and confusion. "Save the world? I don't even know how I got here. I'm not some savior. I'm just a man. I don't know how to fix this." Alia felt a pang of frustration deep within her chest, the weight of years of waiting and yearning pushing against her resolve. She wanted to scream at him, to shake him and demand that he understand the importance of this moment. But she couldn't. She couldn't force him to believe, to understand. He had his own journey to make, his own path to follow. Still, she refused to let go of the hope that had kept her alive all these years. The human had arrived, and now she had to trust that he would figure out his place in this world. She had to trust that somehow together they could rebuild what had been lost. "We don't have time," Alia said, her voice firm. "This world is dying. The planet is unstable, and there are forces at work that are beyond even my understanding. If we don't act quickly, it will be too late for both of us." The man, still reeling from the shock of her words, seemed to snap out of his stupor. He shook his head as though trying to clear his thoughts. "What do you mean? Forces? What's going on here? Why is this planet like this?" Alia took a deep breath, her gaze drifting toward the horizon. The sky, once filled with vibrant colors, was now a dull shade of gray, the sun a mere faint outline behind the clouds. There is something about this world, something ancient. There are remnants of technologies, artifacts that have the power to destroy what's left. There are still factions who seek to control this power, who will stop at nothing to claim it. I've tried to stop them before, but alone, I am no match for them. The tension in the air grew thicker as Alia's words sank in. The man seemed to understand, at least in part, the gravity of the situation. He looked at her, his face now set in determination. "Okay," he said quietly. "So what do we do? How do we stop this?" For the first time since his arrival, Alia saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. He wasn't just a lost soul, confused and aimless. He was ready to take action, ready to face the dangers that lay ahead. And for Alia, that was enough. That was all she needed. "We fight," Alia said, her voice steady. "We find the remnants of the old world. We stop the ones who would use the power to destroy what's left. And together, we restore this planet to what it once was. We rebuild." The man nodded, his gaze locking with hers. There was no more hesitation in his eyes, no more doubt. They had a mission now. They had a purpose. And as they stood together facing the unknown, the wind began to shift, carrying with it the promise of change. It was only the beginning, but it was enough to ignite the spark of hope that Alia had carried in her heart for so long. The arrival of the human had marked the start of a new chapter. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would change everything. The air around Alia and the human was thick with the weight of their decision. It was not just a battle against the physical remnants of a broken world. It was a struggle for hope, for the possibility of renewal. Alia had spent years in the shadow of despair, believing that salvation had long passed her by. But now, standing side by side with the human, there was a new spark in her heart, a spark she had not felt in decades. As they made their way through the ruins of the old city, Alia could sense the change in the human. The man, whose name was still a mystery to her, had slowly begun to adapt. His fear, his disbelief, had started to fade, replaced by a quiet determination. He no longer looked at the world around him with confusion. Instead, he looked with purpose. Together, they had already begun to piece together the lost fragments of their mission. But the road ahead was long, and the dangers they faced were far from over. Alia knew that they were not the only ones who had survived the fall of the world. Hidden among the wreckage were factions, groups who had not only witnessed the destruction but had caused it. These groups sought to control the ancient powers that lay buried beneath the planet's surface, and they would stop at nothing to maintain their dominance. Alia glanced over at the human, her companion in this new chapter. She didn't yet know if he had the strength to face what was coming, but she knew that together they might just stand a chance. It wasn't just a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future, a battle for the planet, for a new beginning. As they reached the heart of the ancient ruins, a place Alia had only visited in her memories, they found what they had been searching for, the remnants of a great machine, an artifact left behind by her people. This machine, capable of controlling the planet's energy, could either restore life or destroy it completely. Alia had seen its power firsthand. She knew how dangerous it could be if placed in the wrong hands. And yet it was the key to saving her world, the only way to heal the planet's wounds. But standing before it now, Alia couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty. Could they truly trust the technology left behind by a civilization that had destroyed itself? Was it possible for this machine to be used for good, or would it bring about another cataclysm? The human seemed to sense her hesitation. He stepped forward, his eyes scanning the broken machinery that lay before them. This is it, isn't it? His voice was soft, filled with awe. This is what we've been looking for. The thing that can change everything. Alia nodded, her heart heavy with the burden of their mission. Yes, this is the power that can restore the planet. But we must be careful. The wrong hands. They will use it to finish what was started. The human turned to her, his expression serious. Then let's make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. We're here now. We can't let this planet die. Not when we have a chance to fix it. For the first time, Alia saw something in his eyes. A quiet resolve. A shared understanding that they were no longer strangers. No longer lost souls wandering in the ruins. They had become something more. They were partners, united by a common cause, fighting not just for their own survival, but for the future of the world they both inhabited. Together, they worked to activate the ancient machine, their hands moving, in tandem as they navigated the intricate alien controls. The planet seemed to pulse with energy as the machine hummed to life, its power coursing through the ruins like a heartbeat, bringing with it the promise of restoration. For a moment, Alia closed her eyes, letting the wave of energy wash over her. She could feel it, feel the planet responding to the power they had unlocked. The air, once stagnant, seemed to stir with life. The winds, though faint, began to shift. The clouds above, which had been a permanent shade of gray, parted slightly, letting in a flicker of sunlight. Alia's heart swelled with hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The planet had heard their call. It was responding. And then, as if the planet itself had made a decision, the ground beneath their feet trembled. The ruins around them began to shift, stones lifting from the earth and hovering in the air as if they had found new life. The ancient machine, now fully activated, sent out a pulse of energy that spread across the land, reaching every corner of the broken world. Alia looked at the human, her heart filled, with an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had come. He had changed everything, and together, they had given the planet a chance to heal. For the first time in a long while, Alia allowed herself to smile. It was a small smile, but it was genuine. She had fought for so long, and now, finally, she could see the fruits of that fight as the landscape began to shift before their eyes. Turning from gray and barren to something more vibrant, Alia took the human's hand in hers. "We did it," she whispered. The human nodded, a sense of pride in his eyes. "We did. And this is just the beginning." They stood together, watching, as the planet around them slowly began to change. The air became warmer, the skies clearer, and the once dead world now felt alive with possibility. Alia had spent so many years believing that she was the last of her kind. But now she realized that she was no longer alone. She had the human by her side. And together, they had changed the fate of an entire planet. The ruins no longer felt like a prison. They were a foundation for something new, something beautiful. The work was far from over, but Alia knew now that they had a chance. And for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her faith rewarded. The future was uncertain, but it was filled with possibility. Together, they had given the world a second chance. And that, more than anything, was worth fighting for.